Welcome to the IAMCP Profiles and Partnership, a podcast that showcases how Microsoft partners and IAMCP members boost their business by collaborating with other members and partners. I'm your co-host, Anthony Carano, and today we're diving into the future of mergers and acquisitions in the Microsoft partner ecosystem. Over the past few years, we've seen massive shifts from the rise of AI-driven services to the premium placed on cybersecurity and cloud expertise. But what does the next chapter look like? As we head into 2026, valuations, buyer expectations, and integration challenges are evolving faster than ever. Joining me again is Tim Mueller, managing partner and co-founder of IT ExchangeNet, one of the leading advisors in technology M&A. They've helped countless Microsoft partners navigate the complexities of selling, scaling, and finding the right strategic fit. In this conversation, we'll explore what's changing in the deal landscape, what metrics will matter most in the coming year, and how partners can prepare today to maximize opportunities tomorrow. If you're a Microsoft partner thinking about growth, acquisition, or even an eventual exit, this episode will give you a front row seat to the trends shaping your future. Let's hear what Tim has to say. Well, Tim, welcome back to the podcast. It's sure great to see you.
Anthony, great to see you and Rudy as well. Always good to chat with you about what we're seeing in the Microsoft ecosystem, and great to do as the 2025 starts to find its way into our memories.
Excellent. Now, for those who aren't familiar with you and IT ExchangeNet, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
IT ExchangeNet has been around for a little bit over 26 years. We focus only in the IT space with a very strong subject matter expertise with Microsoft partners. I think in this lower mid-market, we've sold more Microsoft partners than anyone else in the M&A side. We've done deals in 22 different countries, so a lot of cross-border action, primarily North American buyers that are looking for Microsoft partners in other parts of the world. I've had the honor to speak at multiple Microsoft conferences, such as the EMEA Illuminate with IAMCP recently in Valencia, but also at Directions, Inspire, and other places. So we feel very close to your Microsoft ecosystem, Anthony.
Excellent. And I know we're really looking forward to getting into kind of talking about the trends and expectations here in 2026. Before we do, mate, just share with us a little bit about your time, at Illuminate EMEA.
We didn't know what to expect because we had never been to any IAMCP events outside of America. But I will tell you that they really knocked it out of the park. It was a great combination of networking. So they had multiple blocks of time where they did some matchmaking depending on what your profile was and what your interests were, but then interspersed with excellent content. A lot of content revolved around the whole AI movement. We see that as certainly a big part of where Microsoft is going, but also a lot of good content about how Microsoft partners and practices can grow. So we felt like that was great use of time. I was able to do a keynote there, but also a 90-minute session on how to prepare your business. And it didn't hurt that it was in Valencia, Spain. So all in all, it was really a great use of time.
That's fantastic.
Oh, that's great. I saw the weather there was fantastic. So-
Oh, incredible. It really was. And Spain, the food, the people were lovely. So I think that the EMEA part of IAMCP really knows how to do it. They have a kind of an e-commerce matchmaking app that we used and allowed us to communicate in real time with those with whom we were going to meet. So we really have a great respect for what they've done.
That's great. Let's just jump right into what we're going to talk about today. Let's talk about macroeconomic or tech shifts do you expect will most influence M&A activity amongst Microsoft partners in the next year?
So we've seen, admittedly in 2025, we've seen a lower volume of deals, but we have seen higher valuations. So what that tells us from a kind of a macro view is that buyers are being more selective, but they're rewarding the sellers for building good businesses. So they may not be doing it at torrid paces of high volume, which we actually think is going to shift in 2026. But once they dig in with these Microsoft buyers and or sellers, and they see that they have strong customer relationships, that they see that they've got a vision for what's happening with Copilot and how to, most importantly, how to monetize it. One of the biggest things that we've seen with Microsoft partners the last couple of years was it sounds great, but how do we make money on it? And now I think some things have clicked where they're able now to build agents for their customers and really understand how to make money off of Copilot. But I think from a buyer's perspective, they're seeing that the environment for M&A is getting better. Interest rates, at least in the U.S., will likely go down another click or click and a half in the near future, and so access to capital is there. We're seeing, as much we mentioned in our last episode with you folks, we see that private equity still has almost $1 trillion of dry powder that they have to deploy, and that's their full-time job. So they're going to be very selective, but they have pressure from their limited partners to go out and make deals. What we have also seen in the past is that, over the years, a lot of buyers have looked to kind of buy a book of business. And that was really the understanding of like, what kind of logos do you have and how much revenue is associated with that. But now there's a rise of more of a platform where, they're not looking for just geography as much because there's so much work from home and remote working. But how do we create these platform strategies that have various offerings to go wide? So does a cybersecurity practice have a security operations center, a SOC, that specializes in Microsoft Dynamics? Or is there some kind of vertical dominance that is in state and local government or federal or manufacturing? And that really, from a macro side, is becoming really important for the buyers.
That's really interesting, especially the $1 trillion piece. It's really exciting. But let's talk, Microsoft Ignite is closing today. And so we've seen AI is now embedded throughout the entire Microsoft stack. How do you see AI-driven service providers being valued differently than traditional cloud managed service firms, especially with the announcements that were made yesterday?
Yeah, and Microsoft, I think, is in a pole position right now, particularly with the relationship with OpenAI and how much is being levered. It's not surprising to see that Microsoft is now on their balance sheet for investors showing what kind of revenue is being associated directly with OpenAI, and it's well into double digits now. So there's no doubt that the bet is there. The 13 billion that Microsoft has invested in OpenAI is now probably worth 130 or 140 billion in value. So there's no doubt that the bet is there. But I think the fear from some partners would be, how much self-service will their customers be able to do, not only with Copilot, but also leveraging other platforms like Gemini 3.0 and others? And the fact of the matter is, much like the advent of desktop publishing, right, in the 90s, that we're going to eliminate all advertising agencies and all graphic designers, and then further into a lot of the content tools of websites, people want to do what they do best, and that is run their business irrespective of what that is. If it's light manufacturing, if it is, a service-oriented business, retail, and for partners to be able to go in and be the smartest person in the room with AI tools, I think the value is in how creative they can be to create agents and bots, and to be able then to take the power, the muscle of AI, and be able to then personalize it for their customers. Nobody knows any of these partners, customers better than the partners do, because they've been able to dig in, whether they're doing Azure or they're doing D365 with, any kind of back office work. And so it's incumbent on them to become those experts and to be able to proactively go in and say, knowing what we know about your business, here's how we'd like to layer in slowly some of the AI tools that we can build. And then I think the other part of it is to build it once and try to be able to lever it over many different customers so that it's not going from scratch each time. But the beauty of Copilot is that you're able then to quickly customize it to that customer's needs. So I lived through the dot-com side with my first startup technology firm, and I would say by a factor of 100, I'm more excited about what are the opportunities for AI. And it's not just about cutting resources, even though a lot of consulting firms will be doing it. I think for the people it's in the right hands, it'll create a lot of wealth from Microsoft partners who work well with it.
Well, you mentioned the evolution or the maturity of cybersecurity firms. Do you anticipate cybersecurity firms commanding even higher multiples in 2026, especially given the regulatory pressures that are and rising economic risks in the enterprise?
Yeah, I think that combination of Microsoft Cloud and security together creates an amazing, kind of that solutions partners designation. It creates a lot of wealth and it's very seductive for buyers because the bad guys aren't going away by any means. And the effort that Sentinel and other areas where Microsoft has made huge advancements, and the fact of the matter is, no one really are going to get fired for selecting Microsoft, much like the old IBM saying of the 80s and 90s. So I think that becomes a little bit of the holy grail right now for that intersection of that Microsoft cloud and cybersecurity.
Well, you mentioned a little bit earlier when we were talking about like with the outlook about how with buyers for looking at companies that especially have like with a vertical domination. So how will things like industry specific expertise, whether it's in like healthcare, finance, manufacturing, whatever, shape like some of the attractiveness and deal flow for partners in 2026?
I think it's a kind of a tale of two areas. In one respect, these platforms are trying to go wider because they have to compete against KPMG, Accenture, and others who have really each part of the stack that they're offering. So while they go wide with all of their offerings, they also, by the same token, are trying to go 5 miles deep within a vertical. And I think that that is the combination that is the winning combination for these, we'll call them roll-ups or assemblages of businesses.
Mhm.
But anyway, you look at it, I think that to be the best at what you do in a certain area, we've got a client that is going real deep into, you know, the, the Catholic diocese, where they're becoming the go-to in many ways for Catholic diocese dynamics. And so that word spreads, and all of a sudden they're the ones that could do that. From a buyer perspective, they love seeing that because they know that they've got a specific purpose or calling card. And if they're going to develop anything, they're not all over the board trying to fake it until they make it with one certain vertical. And I think from a customer's point of view, that's a warm blanket for
Mm.
them to know that you've done multiple integrations in that specific vertical. So I think more than now than ever, Anthony, I think that becomes a real silver bullet for these Microsoft partners.
Yeah. And so like as a piggyback on that, are you guys seeing that those with very specific vertical specialization, are they attracting a higher multiple because of the things that you were just talking about?
They are, and that's a great question because it mitigates risk for the buyer to know that there's a certain vertical that is tried and true and that now you can rinse, lather, and repeat.
Hmm.
Going back to what I mentioned a couple minutes ago, instead of trying to create customized solutions for every single customer, now you're able then to build each time you do another integration, you're building off of the last three or four or 10, and that then commands a higher valuation.
Hmm.
Um, for the most part, Microsoft partners are still in that kind of 6.5 to 9.5 times range for a multiple of adjusted EBITDA. But the things that differentiate you is, you don't have a high customer concentration, meaning no one customer represents more than 10% of your revenue. But also more and more, particularly in the Azure stack, you've got multi-year contracts that they can show that they've got that recurring revenue. No doubt two of the sexiest words in our industry is recurring revenue. And if that recurring revenue is backed by contracts,
Uh-huh.
that too, to your question, Anthony, that too is going to bring up higher
Yeah.
valuations.
Does it also does and you you might not, you may or may not be able to answer this, but then, thinking about flipping it then on the, what, like with what makes it so attractive, in addition to the things that you just said, I would venture that it probably for the sellers, because of the repeatability, because of this, they're building up the expertise. There's a speed that goes into being able to do these things faster. That it's had to improve their gross margins, which obviously will drives improves EBITDA, which then would in turn improve the valuation. I mean, are you like specifically around the gross margin improvement? Is that a factor?
Yeah, I think just look at it going from being a generalist to a specialist.
Hmm.
That you now have the ability to have proprietary workflows or even compliance engines or whatever it might be for the legal industry or the dental medical or whatever it might be. And so I think that automatically allows them to shortcut, if you would, their normal, process to be a bit higher gross margins per professional that has been assigned to it.
Hmm.
So we see that as being a great, differentiator,
Yeah.
but also someone that could be much more profitable.
Hmm. I love it. I mean, obviously, as a marketing guy, I'm big into that, and I can end the podcast now and we'll be good. Yeah. So for those that are listening, you want to definitely, niche down and get focused. You'll win more business and you'll sell more, sell for a higher multiple. So that's, uh, that's fantastic perspective. I really appreciate you sharing that. I really hope a lot of partners take that to heart, because I think one of the big temptations we encounter this a lot, obviously being a marketing agency, talking to Microsoft partners. I'm like, well, how do I differentiate? How do I, when they're all selling the same set of tools, right? When they, so I think what you're talking about is really, really key for them. So I appreciate that. So thank you. Going back to then flipping like on the buyers, just with some of the changes, the things that you've just been observing here in this last year, how are buyers adjusting their playbooks for Microsoft partner acquisitions heading into 2026?
What I think they're trying to do is everybody's all trying to figure it out on the fly because the advancements in the AI side are going so fast. And so they're doing a lot more uh, research than they ever have to see what are things that could definitely be competitive by nature. They're as fearful as anyone else about being disintermediated, by AI in some ways.
Mm.
And so I think the buyers are forced to become deeper experts in this. So what they're doing is that they're taking people that have sold their businesses, maybe went on the beach for a year and got bored, and they're bringing them into the portfolio to be that subject matter expert
Mm.
on Microsoft deals so they can speak the same language. So I think you're seeing what we'll call poster child, piece of it where they could dig into a Microsoft business in about 4 or 5 hours
Mhm.
and better understand whether or not it has value or whether or not it's you know if it's more valuable in the hands of a buyer than it ever will be in the seller. And let's not forget, Anthony, the whole silver tsunami that is continuing on with
Mhm.
baby boomers. A lot of these guys don't have a family member to hand it down to. They may not have a management team to sell to, and so they are just, quite frankly, they're aging out and they have to do something, and the buyers know this, and there's not that they're trying to get value buys out of them, but they're trying to make the case to say the business at a certain epoch of time will be more valuable in the hands of the buyer than it ever will be in the seller. And what is that triggered moment that they really should sell? Um, one thing I'll add too is that a lot of times the sellers try to time it where they're just about to get to their inflection. But what buyers really want is to get business as they continue to go upward so that post sale, they don't see something leveling off.
Mhm.
And that's what burns a lot of these Microsoft partners is they get a little bit too cute on the timing.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, something beyond their control levels off their growth. And now they're valued less than they normally would have been.
So kind of piggybacking on that, just thinking around like with the valuation drivers. I know obviously aside from, the two sexiest words, reoccurring revenue, you've got EBITDA. I know you've shared a lot in episodes where, about customer concentration. Some of these numbers are really key. What new metrics, will drive some valuations? And, is things like, yeah, AI adoption, IP ownership, customer data maturity, or other things like what is it that you're seeing that you would, speak to the partners to say, yeah, obviously you got your recurring revenue, got your EBITDA, right? You've got, your customer concentration. What other things should they be considering to help drive that valuation?
From a holistic side of it, Anthony, I would say is how far in the continuum have Microsoft partners gotten into the digital renaissance, if you
Mm,
will, this transformation side of it, where they've got highly skilled technical talent, a very stable labor force. They don't value businesses that are primarily made up of 1099 freelance contractors as much as they want the W-2
mm,
side of it, because they want that institutional memory,
mm,
that knowledge of past clients, particularly if they're knee deep in a vertical, versus having the instability of contractors of offshoring. So while it may make sense for the owner operator to be profitable to run it as a lifestyle business,
mhm.
when they go to sell it, if they don't have the continuity of those long-term W-2s, it is much more difficult. I think size matters with people. So businesses that are just struggling at the 2 or 3 million revenue US versus someone that has broken the barrier of 5 or 10 million in revenue attracts a very different buyer. And with that becomes higher valuations because that they feel like there's a ability to scale better because you've broken through some of those barriers. And that part of it, I think, is very interesting to buyers.
Mm. Could you kind of, if I may, I want to kind of lean in a little bit about the 1099 versus W-2, because you hear that, right? And people, like you're talking about with the institutional memory. Why is that the case?
Well, I just think that part of particularly in the cybersecurity side, there's a there's a competition right now for strong talent. And if that talent really understands what the business is doing and what their customers are all about, it's hard to replicate that with AI anytime soon. People buy from people, people work with people. And I think that customers feel fine that you're using AI tools, but if it's to replace a professional just with a bot that is going to handle a cybersecurity issue that you have in real time, it's unnerving because that is those are your jewels, if you would, that you're trying to protect. So, but the ability to have the same person to contact over and over again, there's
Mhm.
value in that. And it's more than just a mom and pop type of a thing. It's customers that want to deal with that consistency of having the same people. If you've got 1099s, even though they can say, well, that person's worked with us for 10 years, we know they're there, doesn't give buyers as much of that surety that is there going to be a stable workforce.
Interesting. All right, cool. Well, I appreciate that.
Well, Tim, you're giving our listeners a lot of great insights right now in how to improve their businesses. So let's try to drill down a little bit more. What advice would you give a Microsoft partner who's considering selling this next year? What should they start doing now to maximize the valuation of and buyer interest in their business?
Thanks, Rudy. And I think that sets people up to kind of be in position for a sale, much like athletes that are training to get into a competition. So first and foremost is that I think it's worth having an objective third party fractional CFO come in and look at the business through the lens of a buyer and try to see where the red flags might be in due diligence. So typically that costs maybe $3 or $5,000 for a middle market firm to have someone come in, create a bulletproof adjusted EBITDA number that's defensible, but also go in and make sure that categorization of the books are there. That's one thing. Number two is to fortify your management team because a lot of times the buyers will go in and say, in most cases, the owner operator will probably want to exit at a certain point because they're not working, they're not used to working for a BOSS and having a JOB. And so they would want to make sure that that next layer is stable. So if that means restructuring, compensation, allowing them to perhaps have some reward for the sale of the business, but something that puts a stability factor to that management team. I think the third one is to really get psychologically sure that it's the right time to sell. We think it's ill advised to jump into our process and then get cold feet. So, whether or not you want to talk to your advisors, your spouse, your priest, whoever else it's going to be, but better understand that this is your time to do it. So that once you get involved, you're fully engaged to get to the end. Those are just a few things that I think are important, but most of all, the financials to make sure that they are M&A ready going into a process.
Well, that's great advice. Having been through this twice, that's great advice. That's great advice. Well, let's talk about the transformation that's taking place in the marketplace. So, with all transformations, there's also risks involved. So, what potential risks do you see, economic, regulatory, or technologically, that could slow down M&A activity in the Microsoft ecosystem this next year?
Yeah, I am so bullish about the tailwind that we have going into 2026. My partner Marty Wolf and I were just talking last week, and he said, if we're not incredibly successful over the next 18 to 24 months because of this tailwind, it's our own fault. Because, irrespective of what your political leanings are in the US, the current administration is making it M&A friendly for businesses because of lowering interest rates, but also putting in some deregulation, things on that line that make it easier. So we feel like this, you know, 21, 22 were banner years for M&A coming out of COVID because buyers pivoted and said, we're not sure what's going to happen during this pandemic, but we're going to buy our way out of it. So M&A had record years, 21, 22. 23, 24, there was a little bit more uncertainty because inflation, interest rates, a looming election in the US. And I think now as we go into what was considered 24 and 25 of being somewhat flat years, 26 is have at it, guys, because you do have the silver tsunami of people that are just getting older in the baby boom generation that have owned Microsoft businesses for 20 and 30 years. And they're saying, this is probably the perfect time. And then you match it with that perfect storm of the $1 trillion of dry powder within PE. But equally important, Rudy, are the shareholders of larger mid-market Microsoft businesses that are demanding more than a 10, 11, 12% per annum growth. And the only way to do that is through M&A. So that's where this perfect storm of available money, strong administrative support for M&A, and shareholder pressure makes it the perfect time that if you're considering selling your Microsoft practice, this is going to be a pretty good seller's market coming up here.
That's great. I love the term the silver tsunami, being a part of that. So I really love the term. Anthony?
You've given us a lot of really great things to think about. And I know you had mentioned you and your partner were talking about over the next 18 to 24 months. And so what are some of the things, just to maybe kind of reiterate, because it sounds like there's just with a lot of great opportunity. What would be, you had talked about like what's some of the things you need to start doing now about getting the fractional CFO, fortifying your management team, and and about the psychologically, just kind of preparing yourself. What would you say if you had to narrow it down to one thing that you need to do today if you want to, take advantage of this opportunity over the next 12 to 24 months? What's the one thing I should do if I want to look to sell my business, I should do today?
My answer is going to sound a little cheeky, coming back out of it because it's all the rave right now, but fortifying how your AI strategy is going to affect your practice. Where Copilot comes in, where AI, affects cybersecurity offerings. AI as a vision for the future for your business is
Mhm.
critical. One of the very first questions when we sit in on these buyer seller management discussions is, hey, we've taken a look at your books. We see what your projections are for 26. How will AI affect your business today? And what are you doing to leverage it? So if there's a single piece that I would look at that, because all the rest of it is kind of standard fare that we've seen for decades
Hmm.
in M&A about making sure your books are strong and making sure that there are no red flags and having a strong management team below you. But this thing is so disruptive
Hmm.
that if you cannot articulate where you see your business profiting and growing with AI, you'll likely be a hard no for the buyers.
Mm, excellent. Well, Tim, always appreciate the masterclass. It's
I love talking with you guys because you know the space so well.
yeah,
And the beauty is that particularly with this podcast, you're so curious, right, to understand how Microsoft partners can benefit by all this knowledge.
yeah,
So when I listen to your other episodes, I end up getting that master class because we have to know from like a carnal knowledge what is driving these partners.
yeah.
And you guys nail it every time. So I really enjoy chatting with you guys about where we are with the whole Microsoft ecosystem.
So if somebody partner listening, they want to inquire about taking the next steps to sell their business, what would be those next steps? Probably should have clarified that to inquire with ITX ExchangeNet.
I'd say just do a reach out. We're happy to do a free readiness assessment. That allows us to understand the financial side of it, your vision for the future, your succession planning, things on that line. And usually it's a 30-minute question and answer. We come back with an assessment, and that allows us to better understand perhaps what your value is. And we can better explain what the process is to get the business sold. So, we've got something called Ready, Set, Go,
Mm.
and it's a readiness assessment that allows us to understand the business itself. Happy to do that, no strings attached. And if nothing else, it plants some seeds for when the business is ready to go to market. So,
Excellent. We'll have that link in the show notes. And for those who'd want to, reach out and connect to either you or a member of your team, what's the best way to do that?
directly reach me directly at tmueller at itexchangenet.com, or give me a call on my mobile 216-334-9445. And we would love to talk more about you and tell you a little bit about ourselves.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Tim, really appreciate you. Thank you for coming on and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, guys. Rudy, nice to see you.
Good to see
Anthony,
you.
thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Take care, Tim.
What a great episode. And I know I call it's a podcast episode, but every time I talk with Tim, I always feel like it's a master class on M&A. I really, really appreciate his perspective.
Yeah, one of the things Tim brings to these podcasts is he just offers great insight into how the business world is evaluating everybody. And I think that what I got out of this episode was, the advice that he was giving everyone, because this was prevalent throughout our whole conversation, is how AI is affecting your business strategy and your personal adoption of AI into your overall business strategy and how you do leverage that will increase the valuation of your business. And I thought that was great insight from Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was two things in addition to that that really, really stood out to me. Just how he mentioned a few times just how bullish they are and the reasons behind the bullishness for is, I think with the PE firms having $1 trillion in dry powder, so to speak, that to kind of to put to work, coupled with, you've got then the shareholder pressure to want to see returns, in excess of that 10, 11, 12%. So they want to see that money put to work. And then with this opportunity where you have, an aging market as in terms of like, business owners as potential sellers and not necessarily having successors, but they've got specialty, they've got, customers, they've got that, reoccurring revenue in place. So there's just kind of like this convergence that's happening, especially, and for those companies that take advantage of it, there could be great, opportunity and windfall, for their families. The other thing, and obviously this is, being on the marketing side of it, but just hearing it from, the value that buyers see is when, businesses niche, and they get really focused, on a specific, market like that for, and oftentimes, we talk, to our customers how important it is from a, just a sales and marketing, growth standpoint, but how he was approaching it from this is how the value that buyers see in that, buyers of their potential of their business, um, seeing that. So I really appreciated that conversation as well.
Absolutely. Well, that was a great episode. So, for all you listeners, I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of IMCP Profiles in Partnership, powered by Dunamis Marketing. We certainly hope you enjoyed this podcast and find it useful and inspiring. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. One of the best ways to partner for success is to join IAMCP, a community of Microsoft partners who helps each other grow and thrive. IAMCP members can find and connect with other partners locally and globally and access exclusive resources and opportunities. Whether you're looking for new customers, new markets, or new solutions, IAMCP can help you achieve your goals. To learn more, visit the website at iamcp.org.